Hello, welcome back. We are going to finish up this handout on the creation evolution controversy. I hope you've been thinking it through. Today we're going to talk about, is a compromised position of theistic evolution possible? Remember, theism is the position that God creates and rules, and evolution is the position that humans have evolved from previous orders of being, starting from non-life to life, where you have probably the conditions for life, like, I don't know, this is a hard one to think through. What does life require? What is life? Well, life requires amino acids, proteins, DNA, RNA. So those things have to come about from somewhere. And the story is they were from non-living things somehow. So you have non-life to the conditions that form the single life, and those things are necessary for life. And then from life, like a single cell, to more complex life. And more complex life would include plants, animals, mammals, amphibians, reptiles. And then once you have more complex life, you have pre-humans, hominid life, and then from hominids to humans. And each of those steps has some explanatory gaps and issues. But perhaps we can fix them by saying God somehow is behind the process. Maybe God created the first life. Maybe that life is guided by God to get the results of humans in the end. And humans are within God's story of redemption. Right? So when you have God plus theism, you also have some new problems coming in. So let's think about two different ways of conceiving of theism. Historic theism, which would be based on the scriptures, the Old and New Testaments. Even if we just went with the Old Testament, the Genesis story. We'll even just use Genesis. How about that? Which would be accepted by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So we'll talk about historic theism as one thing, theistic evolution as another thing, and then naturalistic science as yet a third thing, where historic theism and naturalistic science are the original contenders in the theistic evolution debate. Can they be wed through this middle thing, theistic evolution? We'll see. Here are some philosophical questions for us to think about. Historic theism finds difficulty in the following area. Remember, historic theism, Genesis story. The concept of man or humans, the concept of creation, the concept of God. So maybe I'll just keep reading and explain as we read. In historic theism, man is not an evolved animal into which a soul is infused. The soul is not something super added to an already living being, but is the life of that being. So in the Genesis story, God creates each thing according to its kind. Each of the animal kinds is created specially by God. And when he comes to creating humans, he creates Adam. That's why it's man. He creates man, and he breathes into Adam, and Adam becomes a living being. And that breath of life is what animates him as a body-soul unity. So it's not like there's this process of evolution, and when we get in time to Adam, God infuses a soul into Adam, and now he's a rational being who can have a relationship with God. No, Adam is created that way from the beginning in historic theism. So that's the first problem. Man is not an evolved animal into which a soul is infused. The soul is not something added to an already living being, but is the life of the being. Adam's alive when he has the breath of life, and that breath of life is what distinguishes him from the other animals. He's rational. Point 2. In historic theism, creation is complete. It's not continuing. Human nature is the same in all persons. It's not differentiated by evolution over time. So in the historic Christian account, in the historic theistic account, which would include Judaism, Christianity, Islam, God creates each thing according to its kind. He creates on 6 days, and on the 6th day he is done creating, and the Sabbath day, the 7th day, is a day of rest where God rested from all his work of creating. This is a definite point where creation is completed. It's completed in 6 days, and if you read that account, those are meant as ordinary days. They're not like, let's put millions and millions of days into this account, because on day 3 the plants are created, and on day 4 the sun is created. I don't know, can you have plants going on for millions and millions of years in darkness? I don't think so. So that story is regular days. It's meant for the readers of the time, and it's an ordinary story with ordinary days. So we shouldn't read evolution back into the story. All right, so human nature is the same in all people because God created humans in God's image. They're not evolving. There's not some people that are more evolved than others in historic theism, but they could be in naturalistic evolution. That's been a problem and a critique. Some people think some are more evolved than others, so they're superior. That's kind of what Hitler thought. Just saying. Okay, let's look at the third point here. Original creation was good and reflected the divine goodness. Natural evil is not necessary. It entered the world only after moral evil. So in the Genesis account, each day it says it was good. It was good. And on the 7th day, it was the 6th day. After everything is created, God said it's very good. And he gives the animals and the people plants to eat. There is no natural evil. No animals are eating each other. There's no devouring of each other. And there's no moral evil. It's good. But in theistic evolution, natural evolution finds God entry on the scene to guide the changes and introduce a soul into humans. And hang on, I'm going to pause here. I want to go back to that statement about natural evil. If we have an evolutionary account, we have God plus evolution, that means God created the world with suffering built into it, and this makes one wonder, is God good then? If there's natural evil, if there's death in the world, and it's not due to moral evil, it's just part of the evolutionary process, then one would wonder, is God good? And actually, Charles Darwin did. He thought this world wouldn't be created by God because there's so much waste and so much suffering that a wise God wouldn't do it this way. So it must be nature working itself out. So the goodness of God is called into question if we say that natural evil is original with creation. And historic theism says it isn't. Natural evil was not there. Natural evil is something imposed by God later on as a callback from moral evil. So, problems for theistic evolution. One, humans aren't a body with a soul infused into it. Humans are a body-soul unity in historic theism. Creation is complete. There's not an evolutionary process continuing in historic theism. And God is good. There's no natural evil in historic theism. Theistic evolution, what are they going to say? Humans are evolving, the creation is evolving, and natural evil is original and it's part of the original creation, and so maybe God's not good. And that would lead me to say, well, then I wouldn't want to worship that God. But historic theism would not agree with theistic evolution. Would science agree? The scientific naturalist, are they gonna let us have this view with God guiding evolution? So that's where we're going here. Natural evolution finds God's entry on the scene to guide the changes and introduce a soul into man to be superfluous, extra, or it's added. It's arbitrary and contrary in spirit to the principle of natural explanation, because God would have to be guiding this whole process from non-life to life so that he got the result that he wanted. So how do you get a human with naturalistic science is going to say it's time and chance and random mutations. But if God is guiding, there's not randomness. So God is behind every micro mutation, which makes doing science impossible. How do you know if you're observing a natural process or some kind of miracle? So science is not going to like this at all. So let's conclude here. Neither side desiring consistency finds this solution of theistic evolution plausible. The issue must be resolved at the level of assumption through the critical use of reason. So we're not going to be able to settle the theistic evolution, creation versus evolution controversy without going back to the more basic questions. Material monism or theism. If we ruled out material monism, then we would also rule out naturalistic evolution. If we ruled out theism, then we would rule out creationism. All right, so that's the level we have to deal with these assumptions, at the level of basic beliefs. Both can't be true and both can't be false. So the next thing we're going to look at is an alternative view to material monism, spiritual monism. And that's going to be a totally different view. So I invite you to come join me as we look at the alternative spiritual monism.